On this episode of the show, I have with me Edward Khoury. He is CTO at Jump, and we're going to be talking about leaning into, well, uncomfortable things in an uncomfortable world. And we're going to be talking to Edward about how he does that, how he gives people space, make sure he's bringing people along, getting buy-in, setting that direction, and understanding how to, keep an eye on shareholder value as well as the team and their composition and a few other things in there as well. But Edward, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Amir, for having me.
Absolutely. Before we start, can you tell everyone what you guys do at Jump?
Yes. So Jump is an end-to-end fan experience platform that is focused on sports ticketing with professional sports teams. Our clients include North Carolina Courage and North Carolina FC, the men's and women's soccer teams in North Carolina, as well as launching with the Minnesota Timberwolves, which is the NBA team in Minnesota.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. That's a whole episode in itself, the ticketing world, but we'll leave that alone for now. This episode, we're going to be talking to you about really the underpinnings of leaning into an uncomfortable world, we'll call it. And obviously, and maybe it's good to kind of define, right, things that make people uncomfortable and what the context of the conversation is. So give us a little context. When we talk about leaning into an uncomfortable world, what does that mean to you?
One of the things that I see happening is that with the transformation that is AI is leading in software engineering in particular, what I'm seeing is that a lot of the engineers that have developed their craft and the details of software craftsmanship over the past decades is coming to attention with being more driven by AI now, where the engineering talent is more managing the AI that is building the code as opposed to them writing the code themselves. And that's an uncomfortable position. People have developed those skills over a long time, and shifting from that to a different way of doing things causes a bit of stress here that we need to work through.
Absolutely. And that does make sense. I mean, we're seeing a lot of different moving parts. We're seeing a lot of discussion around the workflow changing, the environment changing, having to rely less on skills that you've, as you mentioned, have honed for years and become an expert in. I guess everyone, it's very early, very clearly, it's very early, but also people are at different stages of their learning of how to leverage some of these tools within the context of, in this case, we're talking about engineering and software development. When it comes to understanding what your team needs to actually start the process of, if they haven't, and if they have, this still, I think it's still applicable, but to actually get up to speed, right? Getting comfortable. Like, it's not easy. It's one thing to tell people, hey, go download these tools and start playing with them. It's another if they're already doing it themselves. But, for most people, they might need some direction. I don't think everyone is using these tools. There's going to be plenty of teams out there that still need to be brought along. I mean, how do we go about giving people that opportunity to start playing with things that are not in their day-to-day?
There are two paths, I believe. One is encouraging the team and giving them space to experiment with new tools and to see for themselves whether there is value that is being added to their day-to-day. And then there is the other path, which is making sure that it's part of an organization's goals and KPIs and it's being measured and tracked. Because when you don't measure anything, it doesn't really translate into work. And especially engineering teams, in my experience at Jump here during startup phase, there is much more work than you have people. So the teams are constantly overwhelmed with the volume of work that needs to get done. So creating space specifically for this is going to definitely pay off in the longer term. It's a difficult trade-off to make as a startup, but the set of new technologies that we're seeing have the potential to accelerate. So investing a little bit upfront now in giving the team space to learn and leverage those tools is going to pay off in the ability for a startup specifically to accelerate its go-to-market and its feature development, and basically expand the size of the team without growing headcount necessarily.
And maybe we can actually dive deeper into that, because I think, you know, the one thing that is happening is either, well, not the one thing. There's a lot of combination of things happening, but some of the scenarios, what's happening is people are going to experiment on their own, right? At home, as part of their job. And all of a sudden now people are grabbing different tools or seeing what other tools can do. As the CTO, I mean, eventually, if we were looking at the typical engineering, you know, process lifecycle, there are standards. There are things that you want other teams using, things that you let teams decide for themselves, all those different things. But when you look at people going and learning these different tools that are coming out to help with the engineering process, is that okay for everyone to be experimenting with different things? Do you at some point need to start thinking about, hey, you know, we need to actually look at a fewer subset of these tools, make sure we're all evaluating similar things? Or, you know, what are your thoughts around that?
I believe that it's a little bit too early for standardization. There are tools that are popping up basically every week now. And if you're kind of getting stuck on a set of tools and you're saying, okay, this is the only set that we're going to be testing, it's difficult. I prefer the approach of allowing the team to experiment individually, but there has to be a mechanism to bring back the learnings and scale the ones that work. And this is where you can standardize. So for example, I take the Claude Code specific example, because Claude Code, what I've seen is different team members experimenting, and there are configurations and MCP servers that have to connect, and all of those additional files that you have to build in order to make it effective. And if you're building that in silos, you're not getting the benefit of that across the team. So you want to be able to experiment. A lot of things are not going to work, especially right now. Is not every tool is going to add value, but being able to have a recurring forum where people come together, share their learning, and then scale the things that work is important. And I think that platform engineering becomes a very important piece of this, where you can take those learnings, codify them, and share them across the org so that everyone can learn, not having to rebuild from scratch what you learn on one team.
You know, and you had said something about bringing people along this journey. And it's interesting because I do hear some software engineers that really enjoy the craft of creating code. Like that's the thing. And they necessarily don't want to give that up. And as you said in the onto the show, that there are people that need to be helped along the way. When you think about that, and when you look at that, you know, this slight rub of giving up things that you've developed expertise over, are you seeing that you have to convince some people to do that? Or are people more excited about the prospects of becoming more productive but giving up some of those things that they've been, you know, those skills they've been building for years?
What I'm seeing is a combination. There is definitely some tension here. Some folks are attached to the way that they have been building software, which is understandable. The requirement for building software has been more maintainability and reliability over a long period of time. The set of tools that we're creating right now are built for faster iteration, getting to market faster, but we're still looking at how scalable those solutions end up becoming. On the other side, there is fear, and the fear is this going to take my job? And that fear kind of shows up in how you end up adopting some of those tools and wanting to be part of the transformation that is happening. Typically, what I try and share with my teams is the technology is moving, and as you can see, like the amount of investment that's going into development of those tools is enormous. And being on the forefront of adopting those technologies as part of your daily workflows is going to give you an edge. And it's going to be uncomfortable to learn at the beginning, but leaning in is where the value will come. It's not everybody is going to do that. And some people are deciding to not lean in. You can't always bring everyone along, but as leaders, I believe it's our responsibility to help educate the team and create space for them to learn and to come along that journey. But you can't push everyone through the door. You just have to open the door.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And there is a lot of, I guess, noise right now within this area, right? I mean, enterprises are doing their thing with AI, right? That's separate. In the engineering tech world, there's a lot, and typically, engineers love tinkering with new technology anyway. So this is something that's percolating, as you kind of said. It's mixed. Some people are embracing it. Some people are using it as a little bit of a assistant. Some people are like, "Hey, I like coding." When you're looking at that as a CTO, and if you were to put on your future-looking goggles in 2-3 years, as a CTO, knowing that these tools are just going to get better, and you're going to have to convince people to work these tools into their workflow at some point. Do you start seeding that now with people who are a little bit hesitant? I mean, you got to bring those people along. You got to make sure that that there's enough of a population of engineers that need to be brought along that needs to be potentially something consciously you're thinking about.
Absolutely, and having those conversations in as many forums as I can, where it's from one-on-ones with every engineer to engineering all hands to company all hands, frankly, because I don't think this is specifically just an engineering transformation. This is going to impact every role. And I believe every organization needs to lean in and give their entire team a space to experiment with tooling. But enabling the team to see what are the possibilities here and how can this improve their day-to-day lives, as well as add value to the organization, is important. We have to keep doing this consistently. I believe that has to also be matched by organizational KPIs that are focused on delivering value to the organization and to the clients, that enable the prioritization. Because without that, you don't get to prioritize that kind of work. There is the soft side, and then there is the KPI-driven side that I think both have to be worked on together.
Absolutely. And I guess, one aspect, and this is talked about, right? I have never met a team that has zero product backlog. There's more features than they could ever deliver. And the notion that, we're going to see these tools provide productivity. What I sometimes like asking about when it comes to just productivity in general is, what do people do at that time, right? Do they end up delivering more? Do they end up focusing on their activities? I mean, humans are known to expand time to fill it with whatever we need, just because that's what we do. When you think about delivering and you think about some of these tools and their progress, what do you think happens with that time? Are we just going to deliver faster? Are we going to deliver different things? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great point. I think that one of the areas that we're going to see is that as we start delivering faster from an engineering perspective, there is going to be a gap on the product side. So we typically use our product organizations to come up with the business solutions that we need to go solve for. And the engineering team delivers that. As the engineering team is eating through that backlog faster, the the shift in where the bottleneck is going to move on the product side. And this is why I believe that the rise of the product focused engineer is going to become much more important. And you have an engineer that is capable of understanding the business problem and the context that they're solving for, not just the technical solution, is going to become ever more valuable in the next phase. And this is what we talk about at Jump a lot. We talk about with the engineering team and the product team. There is a lot of value that can come out of that.
I mean, I like the way you put that. And maybe a follow up to that is, actually, before we get there, there's a random question. And this is because technology and humans and forecasting, I'm going to come back to productivity in a second. But sometimes I do like asking, because humans are not the best at predicting the future. And I think right now there's so much buzz around what's happening. We just, obviously in relation to even just the engineering development tools, that we are forecasting a very unique path forward, that, hey, all this is going to start working. We're going to see an increase and an improvement in all these tools. And because of that, these are things that are going to happen. Technology also doesn't sometimes deliver on things that we think are going to happen, right? There is, I'm not, because people are going to message me one way or the other. There is a possibility that none of these tools fully develop to replace engineers. There is a possibility. Slim, but there's a possibility. When you start thinking about, when we talk about some of this stuff and we're talking about future stuff, right? This is stuff that could happen, stuff that will happen. The stuff that your team can touch tangibly now and actually see the benefits within production. Are you guys actually, are you at a point where you're seeing some of those things roll into production, like AI generated code is in the production releases?
Absolutely. Significantly. To touch on your point about predicting technology in the future, I completely agree that there is a chance, and I don't know how slim or large it is, but I think definitely there is a possibility that we don't get that exponential curve that we're all thinking is going to happen. However, where am I going to put my bet? If I'm going to bet on something, and as a leader that is leading an organization that's going to survive in the next decade, I really wouldn't bet against the growth. The flip side of that is that we still have to build and maintain code bases that are not entirely AI generated. You need to have strong engineers that are capable of understanding what is the code that is being written and deployed by AI. So I'm not saying that we're going to have AI write code and nobody looks at it and it just goes. We're not there yet, and I don't know if we will get there. But based on current technologies, let's assume that there is no forward progress from today. I believe that we have still yet to realize all the gains that could be realized by the set of technologies that we have today. So I believe that an investment is still required.
And for the record, I agree with you. I don't know if we see that exponential growth through what part of the life cycle. I do think there's going to be a marked impact, and I kind of view, we've seen it already. I mean, IDs have made that impact, right? I mean, we've seen the development of tools that help engineers code faster, more efficiently. What we haven't seen is a heavy lift in terms of actually the keystrokes to generating, which is what takes a lot of time. So I agree with you. I think where we get to, who knows? I think we'll see large gains, and I think I think that'd be good for everyone. I guess now to take that and tie that into what you said about that, what we do at that time, right? And you mentioned being product focused minded. I guess from your perspective, these tools are coming up on board. We're testing everything we've mentioned. Your team has to potentially, if they are not product focused and product focused, let me restate that. If they're not a product focused engineer currently, and they're very comfortable in sitting and coding, and some of these tools will help with that, there is a chance that as technology becomes simpler and gets more democratized, that would be a big gap to make up. I guess from your perspective as a leader, because you said you have to place that bet, which makes sense. You have to get people on board. How do you help people become product focused? Because now we're pulling in a mindset, a way of thinking that isn't where somebody potentially has spent most of their career, like on the keys, behind the keyboard, producing, generating ideas. How do you help with that with your team?
So one of the areas that I believe works well is early partnership with product partners as early as possible in the requirement gathering, in the actually just a business problem analysis. And what I'm working through with my teams are getting engineers exposure to what are the business problems that we're trying to solve for, and then breaking it down in partnership with the product team to start developing more of that muscle. You do have engineers that tend to go that route naturally, but not everybody does. Spending some time with your product team earlier on, as opposed to waiting for the requirements to come in, PRDs, or it's a little too late. Partnering with them earlier on, I think, is more valuable, and is going to produce longer lasting results. As your product team starts going to gather larger problems that to be solved for, breaking them down into smaller chunks, then the engineering team can pick up those smaller pieces and run with them without having the need to go as deep into fleshing out every last requirement. I think that we have to meet somewhere in the middle. And this is different team to team, frankly. But engaging with your product team, I think, is always better.
Absolutely. When you refer to shareholder value, when we were talking about this, we were talking about, obviously the productivity gain. We're talking about more product focused engineers. We're talking about delivering faster. Obviously, the shareholder value is one piece of the puzzle that we don't quite yet know what will happen, because we haven't been in a position to deliver faster on most product backlogs. Things just take a while, right? If we can all of a sudden, instead of taking 9 months or 6 months, it takes 3 months or 2 weeks or whatever that number is going to be, there will be a little bit more onus on evaluating what that looks like. And also, the bottleneck might not be as much technology centric, right? So right now the bottleneck is definitely a little bit more on the tech side or on the engineering side. That just takes time. But if we start shifting that out, we start pushing that, hey, if you want an idea, there's all these tools. We can actually accelerate development via these ways. That is going to put a little bit of pressure on a lot of other teams to actually operate differently. I mean, salespeople that like to talk about stuff that could deliver faster, that's going to change their workflow. Product teams are going to have to think about features that are just released faster, how they're going to go through testing and evaluating. I mean, there is a impact on the whole supply chain here, right?
Change management and adoption by clients is another one that I think is really critical. Absolutely. I think that across the board, that acceleration development is going to lead to bottlenecks a little bit further down the line. But the value that can be created by those tools needs to be included in the product itself. So I believe that as we're building more functionality, leveraging AI capabilities into the product itself to help with the change management on the adoption side is also going to be critical. So not just on the development side, I think that focusing on product features that help your user do more without having to learn as much as they needed to is going to accelerate change management. And yeah, different products have different ways of thinking about this, but I want to give an example, maybe to make this a little bit more concrete. So instead of building a workflow that is 12 steps to get done, if you leverage some of the capabilities to compress that and allow the human in the loop to be verifying results as opposed to having to do every manual step, they don't need to learn 12 steps. They just need to learn how to verify and how to make sure that that workflow delivers the value that they're looking for. So I think that adding capabilities in the product to help with change management on the user side is going to be equally critical. But I don't think that there is a shortage of things to build. There's plenty of things to build.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting because obviously we're going to be given a whole new set of capabilities that we're going to have to figure out what to do with. And, I guess maybe the last question is if you're looking at, how you're planning your roadmap out right now, your org, headcount. I hear different things from different engineering leaders, but at this point, have you started taking this into account? Obviously we talked about the exponential growth and where that's going to be is one thing, but within the next quarter, the next calendar year, as you're planning, how much of these tools are you incorporating in your planning, or where is that sit right now in your thoughts, at least?
I absolutely think that it needs to be incorporated across the board from your hiring plan. So who you're hiring needs to adapt to the set of tools that we have. From the set of CTOs that I know across the industry, not this particular industry, but all industries I talk to, they are starting to hire specifically for people that are leaning in. So that impacts your hiring plans. On the product roadmap side, I think that is a critical piece where you have to focus on value creation. And you can start seeing clients are asking for more value out of the products that they use. And the expectation is going up, which is great. We have more to build. I don't believe that we will need less people. I believe that we'll be able to do a lot more with the size of team that you have. But for a startup, you're always resource constrained. So you need to get as much productivity out of the team that you have as possible. And this gives you tremendous leverage. There is an impact on cost, which is going to go up from leveraging some of the new tools that come up. So that has to be planned for. And in certain areas, I'm seeing some of the people on the team running out of their quotas and they have to replenish. And there is an actual cost there, especially during experimentation phase, that tends to blow up a little bit. We're thinking about this every day. It's consistent part of our planning as an exec team, as an engineering team, product team. We're focused on making sure that we're carving out specific revenue generating capabilities in our platform that leverage this new set of tools that we're
Absolutely. Edward, I was going to say, we've covered a lot of areas. I'm sure we're not going to exhaust this topic. I'm sure there's going to be more to talk about. In this case, if somebody does have a follow-up question for you, something you've mentioned on the show, something where people do want to ask you a follow-up, is there a good way of connecting with you?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is always the easiest path. My LinkedIn is Edward Khoury. I can share a link and we can definitely put that in.
Okay, absolutely. Again, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks, Amir. Great to see you.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think it's a great topic to talk about. I mean, leaning into an uncomfortable world for a lot of people in engineering. Some people are embracing diving into a lot of these AI assisted development tools. Some people enjoy coding, and Edward kind of walked us through how he is helping bring some of those people along, how he's setting that direction, how stakeholder value is actually going to be affected. We have talked about product focused engineering as well. Please share this episode with somebody that might benefit from hearing it. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.